What's up, everybody, and welcome to the On the Runs YouTube channel, where we are dropping some of our amazing guest episodes for all you to hear and see on the podcast. And on this one, we have episode 100. Can you believe we made 100 episodes, Erica? And now we're finally doing YouTube.
I am so excited for this one in particular, but 100 episodes. I can't wait to see what else you wind up dropping. No pressure.
There's going to be some good ones, some of our favorites from last year. I'm working on editing, and then hopefully every episode going forward from 100 will be on YouTube a few days after the audio version drops. Watch these YouTube videos or just listen to them. Sometimes you might get a little extra. So it's a lot of fun. Stick around for more of our YouTube channel. Subscribe and like these, because I'm going to be dropping some extra, maybe bonus clips of the episodes we have with our amazing guest, Kathrine Switzer, from the 1967 Boston Marathon, the first official woman to run the Boston Marathon. What a story. And I love this because so many people have their own version of the story, and there's nobody better to hear about the real story, what really happened, from Kathrine herself.
Exactly. And she tells it like it is, with so much detail and heart and feeling. You guys are going to absolutely love this.
Guys, I hope you enjoy this amazing episode with Kathrine. She was fantastic. You're going to love this. Thank you. And Erica?
Don't forget to stretch.
All right, here we go. Are you ready, Kathrine?
I'm ready. Let's rock.
Let me make sure I get this right. Switzer.
Correct. Like Switzerland.
Yes.
Easy to remember.
All right, here we go. Our next guest on the pod is one of running's most iconic figures. She was introduced into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 2011. She's the winner of the 1974 New York City Marathon, a writer, an Emmy Award-winning TV commentator, and the founder of 261 Fearless. But number one, she broke the gender barrier, becoming the first woman to register to run in the 1967 Boston Marathon. We are very excited to welcome Kathrine Switzer to the On the Runs podcast. Kathrine, how are you?
I am really great. I'm so happy to be here and join you guys. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, I am beyond words excited to have you here, Kathrine. We are among a legend right now. So welcome to the podcast. I can't wait to just dive in and get to know all about you. Not more than we already know.
Well, I can tell you one thing all three of us have in common. It is really cool and really special. We're part of a small little group, but we're all lefties.
Oh, isn't that interesting? How did you know I was left-handed?
I've done my homework.
Oh, my goodness.
That is so random. I mean, it's very rare to find anybody left-handed. I also forget that he's left-handed, and we talk like all the time. So, yes, it's a very fun club.
Good. Okay, great. Well, you know, we know how to work all kinds of things like, well, old-fashioned telephones and scissors and stuff like that. I used to have a hell of a time in phone booths. I don't know about you, but you're probably so young and don't even remember a phone booth.
Oh, we do. I'm a little bit ambidextrous though, so I've got both hands working for me, but I cannot write with anything but my left hand.
I'm the same. Everything for me is lefty. But Kathrine, you are in New Zealand right now. It is actually tomorrow. It is Tuesday. We're recording. It's Monday here. It's Tuesday where you are. You're in New Zealand. How's New Zealand treating you these days?
Well, I mean, I love New Zealand. I'm a New Zealand citizen now. I'm a dual citizen. I met a wonderful New Zealand guy. But yes, as for being a day ahead of you, if you want to know the future, just call me. I'll tell you the weather.
Gonna keep that in mind.
It's difficult to organize events like this, for instance, you know, because it's earlier in the morning for me. But hey, look, New Zealand is paradise. It's wonderful for running. Of course, we're going to be talking a lot about running today. And my husband is Roger Robinson, a very well-known world-class runner, has been since he was 24, and he's now pushing 85 in every age group. I often say Roger's name is engraved in Copley Square at Boston, and mine is not, interestingly enough, because he ran and set a record and won the Masters in 84. And one of my highlights of my life was actually doing the TV commentary for so many years at Boston and calling his finish, you know. That was really great.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he's also a well-known author, many books, probably 5 or 6 now about running. And the latest is Running Throughout Time, Running's Greatest Stories. So I'll give him a little plug there. But yeah,
Please
when
do.
I met him and we decided to get married, we wondered what country to live in. And I've been married a few times before, and I realized that in a relationship, if one person gives up everything for the other person, it's very romantic at first, but then it gets very tough on somebody later. And so we decided to divide it and live in both countries where we both had our roots and our area of influence, if you see what I mean. Although, running is so global. But, and it's worked out really well. It's expensive. I mean, you guys worry about mortgages and car payments. We worry about airfare.
Very true.
Because New York to Auckland is a hell of a flight. But anyway, it's amazing to be in this amazing little country because it really is environmentally conscious like no other place I've ever been. And the land is still new. I mean, geophysically, it's still a new country. We have earthquakes and volcanic explosions and tsunamis and all those kinds of things where most of the world doesn't, and it's a common occurrence here. But I mean, I just got back, for instance, from a long, it's not long for an ultra runner. It was 50 miles, but it was over mountain passes and swing bridges and cliffs, hike, and which they call a tramp here. And I had to carry a 20-pound pack and sleep communally and wash in streams and eat dehydrated food for 4 days. But it was magic. And the only way you can get into the country is to walk it, or if you're good, run it. And that's one of the greatest things about running. It connects us to the earth and gets us really close to this wonderful environment. And so I'm very blessed, really to be here. My American home is in the Hudson Valley of New York, and also very near super duper trails and woods and the Mohonk Preserve, which is fabulous and has a wonderful big race coming up on May 4th called the Rock the Ridge, a 50-mile enduro race. So I'm not into enduro running so much, but I love doing all my training on trails.
I was just going to ask you that question, which you prefer, because it sounds like you are very one with nature. So I'm trying to get into the more trail running myself, just to not trip over things, but to enjoy the scenery and just more quiet than roads. So yeah, I'll definitely take that up.
Well, Erica, I'm 77 now and I'm still running. And in fact, I ran my fastest 10K that I have in 10 years recently.
Way to go.
Yeah. Well, carrying that pack really built up those quads. I got to tell you, I was pretty powerful.
It. That's no easy feat. 50 miles over 4 days, heavy pack. Yeah, oof, I haven't done that.
It was the pack. But actually, I started, and Roger was a great influence on this, when we moved out of New York City. In fact, while we were still in New York City, we ran on the bridle path in Central Park. And I moved in from the road and got on the bridle path simply to get my feet and my legs off the hard surface. I trained all my life on hard surface, and I was beginning to get a little Achilles problem, niggles in the knees. Once I got on dirt, I was fine. And I think that these dirt paths have saved my legs. I really do. So I'm a real believer in them.
Excellent. I just need to be a little more graceful. Let's put it that way with my running off the paved roads.
She needs to pick those feet up over those roots from time to time.
Nailed it.
Sometimes just
that's the hard part.
Them.
Well, that also is good too, because it forces you to, make your decisions quickly about where you put your feet, and it really works on the balance.
It does.
And I don't know if this is the right word, proprioception, the ability
I don't know.
Well, the ability to read the land. For instance, Roger is incredibly good at cross country. Whereas, for instance, he's not a good dancer. But on cross country, his feet just move. And you watch some of the really, really good trampers in New Zealand, and their feet just kind of know where to go. It's really amazing.
I'm very envious of that. Yep. That's like the Courtney Dauwalter, who it's so natural for them to just run over these crazy terrains, and it just looks so fluid and beautiful. But someday I will get there.
And aren't they wonderful? The women.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. And there was this fabulous race called the Further,
oh my gosh. Yes. With Camille Herron. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
They're unbelievable. And I mean, one of my greatest heroines, of course, is Jasmine Paris, who won that huge race in the north of England and Scotland or whatever. My God, in the middle of the night and nursing her baby along the way.
Absolute, so much
Eric,
inspiration
don't
with
tell me
that.
we don't have it all. We've got it all here.
You got it all. It is all you, the two of you, and all you
We're
women.
just jumping
You're
right
amazing.
in about how awesome women can be. Like, they didn't
take
believe
over.
us.
I'll just listen.
That was one of the things that
You
you
guys
had to
are rock
overcome
stars.
with just men not believing that women could do hard things like that. And what do they expect? We can birth children. Like, that is not an easy feat whatsoever. I mean, it took how many years for the science to come through for them to believe that? It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is amazing. But for thousands of years, women did not have the advantage of not having children. And the fact, I mean, the advent of birth control has revolutionized many things, and maybe if we get it right, we can save the world. But honestly, there's no man in the world who can take 3 days to have a baby, and nature provides also a fat resource, and that stamina and temperature control, and let's face it, sleep deprivation. Women are extremely good at it. There's terrific race here in New Zealand called the Grand Traverse, and this a 6-day race, and there are 3 guys, 3 women. The guys push the team for the first 3 days, and then they're dead. And I said, well, why do the women always bring the team home? And they said, because we can no longer read the compass. See, it's amazing. And I said, well, throughout history, women have come home to 6 screaming children.
Yep, no sleep in their futures, though.
And not murdered a single one of them.
How about that? Oh, absolutely amazing.
Well, I feel like you read my mind a little bit when we were talking about New Zealand, and you mentioned you grew up in the Hudson Valley of New York. So you're a New Yorker. Eventually, you ended up in Syracuse. Tell us about growing up in New York and landing in Syracuse.
Well, Eric, I didn't actually grow up in New York. I was born in Germany. My dad was in the Army. I grew up mostly in the Washington, D.C. area, and we lived in Chicago for a while. No, New York. My dad didn't want me to go, further than Lynchburg College in Lynchburg, Virginia. Perfectly good little college. I went there for 2 years, and then I transferred into Syracuse. And that was a big shocker for me, from, kind of a little southern kind of place to a very out there, slightly quite left-wing university. I wanted to be a journalist, so I went to the J school at Syracuse, the Newhouse School. That was a great passport. Erica will appreciate this probably more than you, Erica. I wanted to be a sports writer, and women were not sports writers in 1966.
Kills me.
But I figured if I had a passport from a big, journalism school, and I could write, and I could have a leg up, might get the job. So I was writing like crazy, and at Syracuse, I had that passport, and I stayed on, got a job, and worked at got a degree at night, and got my master's degree. And this was during the time then of the Boston Marathon. So it was at Syracuse where I actually met the guy who introduced me to marathon running. I'd been running since I was 12. My dad told me that life was to participate, not spectate, and I should get out and run a mile a day, and I'd make the field hockey team in my high school. And it was life-changing for me, because it wasn't the running so much as the empowerment that it gave me as a skinny little kid, in a very big high school. So by the time I got to Syracuse, I was running about 3 miles a day. And I asked the coach if I could run on the men's team, because there were no sports for women. Can you imagine that? 25 sports for men, all scholarship deep. Women had play days. 1 day a year we had a play day. I said, what? Kidding me.
So unacceptable.
So I went into the coach's office, and this is another one of those life moments, turning moments. I went into the coach's office. I asked if I could come and train on the men's run on the men's cross country team.
Yes.
And he took a big breath, and he said, well, we've never had a girl before, but we cannot allow you to come officially because it's against NCAA rules. But we would welcome you if you wanted to come and train with the team. I said, great. Oh, thanks. That's all I really want,
Yeah.
So I shut the door. And as I shut the door, just before it closed, you know how you can hear a conversation? He burst out laughing to his colleagues. And he said, I guess I got rid of that one.
Tell me you
So
showed up. Tell me
So
you
what do you
showed
do?
up.
You know, that's
Yeah,
Woody Allen
what
says.
did you
Secret
do?
of my
Stick it
success.
to
He said I
this guy.
showed up. So when
Good.
I showed up, you know what? The guys were wonderful. I said, "Wow, what a sport! This is terrific." The guys were really welcoming, and there was a
Excellent.
little guy by the name of Arnie Briggs who was the university mailman, and he had been out there training with the guys because he was a Boston Marathon runner, and he would do his mail route and then come and train with the guys. And by the time I met him, I was 19, he was 50, had a bad Achilles, bad knees, and he jumped around like a jackrabbit. He said, "We've never had a girl before. You know, I've been here 30 years. We've never had a girl." Anyway, he took me under his wing because I was slow.
Oh, wonderful.
and he was injured. So injured, I could keep up with him. And then we started getting our mileage up, and every day he'd tell me another Boston Marathon story. He'd run it 15 times, and
Wow.
occasionally finished in the top 10. And it was the day he was a hero. You know, he was just. I mean, he was a little guy. He was a volunteer coach, and you know what did Arnie Briggs know? And yet, when he ran the Boston Marathon, he got his name in the paper, and he got kissed by the girls at Wellesley, and it was a big deal for him. He was a hero for a day, you know.
Yeah.
So I just admired the spirit so much. But I was cranky one day, and I told him I didn't want to hear about the Boston Marathon anymore. Let's just go run it. And he said a woman couldn't possibly do it. I said,
Challenge
"What?"
accepted, am I right?
I said, "Arnie, you're telling me how great I am. We're running 10 miles a day." And he said, "Yeah, but a woman, 10 miles is not 26. And I said, "Yeah, but I mean, Roberta Gibb jumped out of the bushes and ran the Boston Marathon,
Just the year before.
The year before. And, Arlene Piper in 56, 59, I'm sorry, 59, run up and down Pikes Peak. And a couple of women had run the Equinox Marathon up in Alaska. He said, "No dame ever ran no marathon."
Oh, Arnie, I have a feeling
Yeah.
you're going to get it handed to you.
And you don't have a training partner. And we argued.
Yep.
And finally, he said, "All right." He said, "You know what?" He said, "If any woman could do it, I believe you could. I've thought about this." And he said, and if you showed me in practice, I'd be the first person to take you to Boston. And I said, "Hot damn, what do you need?" I have a coach, I've got a training partner here, and I got a buddy. That was the biggest thing. And
absolutely.
Oh God, the snow! It snowed 9 yards that year in Syracuse, and
oh my gosh,
never saw bare ground. Oh, we were tough as nails. We were training in the dark. We were training in blizzards, and the day came to run the 26 miles, and we're finishing it, right? And I said, "Arnie, we're gonna do it." And he said, "Yeah, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's really great." And as we got closer, he kept saying, "You look so good. You look so good." And I said, I don't think we measured it right.
No.
So I said, let's do another 5-mile loop. And he said, "Can you do another 5-mile loop?" And I said, "Sure, can't you?" And he goes, "Oh, I guess." So we went out again, and we're coming now finally up, it was 31 miles.
So you just casually did a 50K that day.
I know.
Hey, Arnie. Yeah, here we go.
And you know what? He starts weaving across the road, and his eyes are gone. And I said, come on, Arnie, a mile to go. Let's go. Come on. He was out of his mind. Eyes were just back in his head. When we finished, I threw my arms around him. He said, we did it. We're going to Boston. He passed out. But to our point, earlier we had said, about women and endurance and how we discover that endurance. When he woke up, he went like this. He said, "Women have hidden potential in endurance and stamina." And I said, it's the truth, because the guys on the cross country team wouldn't come out and run with us after, 12 or 13 miles. They said we were crazy people. But at 12 or 13 miles is when I could keep up with them. And so there was our difference. And not to say they couldn't have trained up for the distance, of course. In those days, a woman wasn't going to be outrunning a man. But now, it's all changing. And it is a really exciting time for women, right now. I mean, for the whole world. I mean, when we're looking at this new potential of what capabilities, I think it's just going to completely change the face of sports. I mean, you're looking at soccer, Women's World Cup soccer, completely different game. And Women's World Cup rugby here in New Zealand, oh my God, they weren't hitting hard like the guys, but they were so fast and they went forever. They could keep up that pace and nobody, it was just completely different. It was wonderful to see. Anyway, carrying back the Boston Marathon, so it was Arnie who insisted I sign up for the race.
Yes.
And I said, why can't we just go and jump in? He said, you just can't do that at Boston. It's a serious race. You're a member of the AAU. You're a card carrying athlete, girl. You gotta follow the rules and pay your $2 entry fee. And I said, okay, but I said,
I love it.
Yeah.
I wish it was still $2.
It was a sweet moment when we were signing the entry forms at my dormitory. And I said, Arnie, if I wear a number in the Boston Marathon, I'm going to be really noticed. And he said, I know. And I'm proud of you. Amazing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Arnie totally turned his tune around. He knew he could do it. He believed.
Yeah, but you know what? Now, here's a guy who had run the Boston Marathon 15 times. He knew all the officials. He was respected. He, in fact, had trained and gone to races with Jock Semple, and we'll get to that story in a minute. But he was putting his reputation on the line for me.
Oh, okay.
It's another way of looking at it.
Yes.
He believed so much that he and a couple of guys of the cross-country team were going to drive up to Boston. They were going to run the race with me because he believed in me. And he could have said, look, I'm sorry, I just can't do that. And he didn't say that. And
I'm proud of him for stepping up and
yeah, it's
in the right direction, right?
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I've realized how difficult that would be. I mean, would you do it for somebody?
I would like to say I would, but I mean, at the time, it's just you never know because this is one thing that he looked forward to all the time. And it was like his crowning achievement pretty much, right? So he would be risking that. He may not be able to run it again. So for him to do that for you is huge. That is a very big sacrifice.
Yeah. And and I thought that he was just as naive about the potential as I was, but I don't think that's the case. I think that he had thought about it a lot. Anyway, well, the rest of the story, the morning of the race, it was in Boston, it was sleeting and snowing. Arnie went in and picked up the bibs for the whole team, came out to the car. We pinned them on there. We, just stayed because the gym was too crowded. And he said he didn't want me to go in there anyway because all the men were running around naked. And
oh, wow.
And he said you'd be embarrassed. And anyway, so I pinned on the numbers and we went over to the churchyard there, the Catholic church in Hopkinton, parked the car and started our warm up and then got on the race. And a mile and a half down the road, the press truck came by us. In those days, the press truck started behind the race. Go figure.
Oh, I see.
Well, the best shot they could get was to come through the whole field. And come.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're coming through and seeing all the runners as the truck's passing the runners. It's a good shot.
It's a good shot, yeah. And in those days, the race was, well, they kept saying it's getting out of control. There are 500 people here. And they made us all move over and beep the horn. And I thought that was very dangerous. And they came through and the press truck then shot backwards and went up to the front of the race. And as they were coming through, of course, they saw me. And very excited seeing a woman in the race. And they slowed down and was, hung on there and took pictures for her. But alongside of me was a bus. And on the bus were what I call the scribes. They were the journalists who were not taking pictures. So they're working on their typewriters. And they would type their stories as they went along. And then they would have a courier at 10K and whatever, drop off their stories to get into the newspapers downtown. There were 7 editions of a Boston paper in those days. Amazing, 7.
It really is.
Yeah, yes. I miss it terribly, honestly. I know I'm a nerd, but I love paper. Anyway, on the bus was also were all the officials. They dropped off can you imagine this? They dropped off the timers as they went along. And so Jock Semple, the co-race director, along with Will Cloney, were on the bus. And the journalists were giving Jock Semple in particular a really hard time because they always picked on him because he always had a short fuse. And he was always getting into trouble. And so they said, "Hey, Jocko, look at that. There's a girl in a race." And oh, KV Switzer. I wonder what her mother calls her. Curry, Kate, Kim. Uh, and he just jumped off the bus and went after me.
Wow. So
Yeah.
do you
And
think it would have happened if the journalist wouldn't have riled him up so much? Like, do you think he still
no, I
would have
don't.
done something?
I think he would have gone alongside of me and started shouting at me.
But
Uh,
not quite to the extreme that we know happened.
yeah. But I had heard about him and seen him also in action later, where if a guy had a lower bib number and was up near the front, he would just push him and bop him and say, "Get the hell out of here. You're not an elite
Wow.
athlete."
No way.
He said he was really very, very feisty.
Arnie
And
knew him too, right? Your coach
yeah,
knew him. Yeah.
they used to go and they ran races together. So when Jock grabbed me and screamed at me, "Get the hell out of my race and give me those numbers," he was trying to rip my 261, my bib number
Yeah.
off. I jumped away. I was terrified. I mean, I didn't see him. I was totally blindsided by it. And Arnie grabbed him and said, "Leave her alone, Jock. She's okay. I've trained her." And he just smashed Arnie like that and said, "You stay out of this, Arnie." And I thought, what? These guys know each other, And
So you didn't know this at the time.
I didn't know where this guy had come from. He's a maniac. And so then he came back and he missed the bib on the front and he went for the one in the back, got the corner. That's why you can see this logo here has the ripped off corner right there.
Oh,
Love
look at the attention to
I
detail
love
there.
it.
Yeah, because that's the symbol, the symbolic thing.
Yes.
We'll get to
Okay.
in a minute.
Yes.
But
yes.
anyway, he went for the one on the back, got the corner off, so it flapped during the race. But as he grabbed for me, my boyfriend who was running with me, this is another story and also hilarious and sad and funny, who was only in the race because I was running it and he was a world-class hammer thrower. And if a girl could run, he could run.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. 235 pounds over 26.2 miles and not more than 3 miles of training, right?
Oh, he must have been hurting after that one.
I couldn't convince him. But anyway, he came in handy because he took out Jock with a fabulous shoulder charge. Jock went flying through the air. And Arnie everybody was shocked because it was such a powerful hit. And I thought, you heard that kind of crunch, that football crunch, and I thought, oh yeah, God, Tom's killed him. And everybody looked and goes, ah! And Arnie screamed, "Run like hell." And off we just tore down the street, went flying past the press truck, and then the press truck accelerated and they got screaming and yelling and the retelling is hilarious. Okay, but at the time it was really terrible. And
absolutely.
So they're screaming and yelling at you, the press truck?
Yeah, well, they were screaming, yelling at the driver too.
Okay.
Hurry up, pick it up, go after her. And then they weren't screaming at me, but then they got very aggressive. When are you going to quit? What are you doing? What are you trying to prove? I know. I'm all of 20 years old, and I'm so humiliated because I felt like I had ruined a really important race. Somehow, I knew this was like the Olympic Games as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, you just wanted to run. You didn't want the attention. You just wanted to do it.
Right, exactly right. And I said to guys in the press truck when they said, "What are you trying to prove?" I said, "I'm not proving anything. I just want to run." And then they said, "Well, when are you going to quit? When are you going to quit? When are you going to quit?" They really wanted me to quit.
Be like, how much time is it? How many miles left to the finish? That's when I'll quit.
Now we're maybe 2 miles into the race, right? Maybe. Oh,
God. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And finally I said, "I'm not quitting. You might as well just go." And it was really amazing. I knew there's a split second when I thought, should I quit? Because maybe I've done something really terrible here. And, but I knew if I quit, everybody would say, women can't do it. She was just there for the publicity or something. And besides the car, we had to make a decision, right?
Yep.
And also, I knew if I quit, everybody would say women are always barging into place, which is what they said about work, education, everything. They were saying women are always barging into places they're not welcome, and then they can't do it. Well, of course they can't do it if they get treated like that.
No
And so I knew
kidding.
just reinforce the belief. And I just said to Arnie, I said, Arnie, I don't know where you stand now with me in this, but I'm going to finish this on my hands and my knees if I have to. I have to finish this race now. And suddenly it was that moment where you grow up, and that's what it was. I mean, that was it. So I carried on. The press truck finally left, and I murdered Jock Semple in my mind every way a person could be murdered. And then when I got to Heartbreak Hill, you're on fumes. And you guys are on Boston, right? Okay.
I have.
She
yes.
has. I'll do it one day.
Yeah. Well, when you get to Heartbreak, because you have to be really used to the downhills before then you're coming up and you say, oh my God, what happened? You're kind of on fumes. And then that's when I forgave him. I said, yeah, of course Jock Semple was going to act like that. What else does he know? He's a product of his time.
Yes.
It's not in a way, it's not his fault. So
So you're thinking about this during the race, going up the Heartbreak Hill.
well, of course I was thinking about the whole incident the whole way,
Yeah.
You're tumbling it over, and tumbling it over.
It's hard to get past something like that. That's like a huge thing. That's just being embarrassed, and it sticks around for a while.
Yeah, and I was getting tired. Of course, I'd trained the distance, but I mean, Boston was different. Even though I trained hills, it was no problem. I had no doubt that I could and would finish.
Yeah.
And of course, my shoes are too small. My feet were bleeding. All of those kinds of things. But I decided, God, it's not his fault. And it's up to me and other women like me. We got to change the way this guy thinks. So at that point, I said, what would change his mind? And I said, well, if I ran well, it would change his mind, because I'm going to finish here slowly. Because Arnie said, let's just slow down. We got to make sure you finish. Yes. And, it was a 4-hour, 20-minute marathon, which, of course, was a jogging pace in those days.
That's great to my standards. I think that's amazing.
Well, I know. For a first marathon, it's perfectly acceptable, I think.
Absolutely.
I knew it was a jogging pace. And when and then I got angry at women, to my shame. I said, why aren't they here? Why don't they get it? They could feel free. They could feel strong. And then I thought, oh, you stupid girl. You're really stupid. Your dad encouraged you to run. You met Arnie. The guys on the team were really nice to you. You had a support system. And most women don't have anything like that kind of encouragement.
Right.
And so I said, okay. If they only had the opportunities that I've had, we could change things. But I didn't know what that was going to look like. I knew that if I became a better athlete, that I could convince the Jock Semples of this world.
Yes.
So when I finished the race, everybody said, weren't you excited when you finished? And no, I wasn't. It was cold. My feet were bleeding. And I felt this huge burden of responsibility, that okay, I've stepped in it. Now I've got to do something with it. And it was very polarizing. I got hate mail, really amazing stuff about how cry in hell, it was God is going to doom you. And then other people would write and say, that was so cool, we're putting your picture on our mantelpiece. And so it was really, really amazing. But it gave me time to figure out a lot of stuff over the years. Then when I was training, I trained myself finally down to 251.
That's amazing. That is such a wow.
I'm not a talented athlete. But I
say otherwise, Kathrine.
Well, I was fascinated with what my body could do. And it is an extraordinary experience to get better, as any runner knows. We're so proud even of 3 or 4 minutes here and there.
Oh,
and and to knock off that amount of time, I said, okay, now you're world ranked. Because at that time it was, it would have won the Boston Marathon every year up to that point for women. And I wasn't. I got a second, but I got beaten by a world record. So you can't fault that.
You still have to be proud of yourself for the work you put in. That is incredible. So proud,
because I had achieved much more than I ever thought I could do it. And
absolutely.
Then, now, if I can do that, what are other women can do if they only had the opportunity. And so by that time, women like Nina Cusick, Sarah Mae Berman, we were organizing and legislating and trying to change the rules. I was really good at organizing events. Sarah Mae worked a lot with the Boston Athletic Association. Nina was really terrific with all of the hard legislation with the AAU and changing the rules. I was expelled, by the way, from the AAU for, among other things, running the Boston Marathon without a chaperone. How about that?
I thought you had a chaperone. What else was Arnie? Come on.
Hey, what about that big football player, you know?
Right.
And all those other men out there who loved you and were like, this is so cool. I bet they would all put their hand up and say, I was her chaperone.
Oh, God. Anyway, but then I began organizing events, and then that's when I realized that's what the opportunity is. You create the opportunity, field of dreams, build it, they'll come. I began organizing races, and then I said, we got to get this serious, and sponsorship is going to make it serious. I went to Avon Cosmetics with a proposal that I knew they were never going to accept, and it was to create a series of races around the world for women only. And each these races would be longer than 10,000 or 10Ks, and culminate annually with a women's only marathon in a major city. And they loved it. And they hired me.
No way.
No, yeah. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And I could write, I wrote a hell of a proposal. I knew PR, and we started this program, and it became one of the biggest and best promotions they ever did. And our aim was to get the women's marathon in the Olympic Games. People thought I was smoking weed, when I told them that. And I said, no, we just need to get we started working with the IOC and the IAF, and they said, okay, what you needed, this many countries, this much participation. We already had the talent. By this time, Greta Weitz and Joan Benoit were coming through with some really amazing times. And so then we began getting the member nations together. So eventually we had races in 27 countries and 5 continents. And the participation for the Olympics was 24 countries and 3 continents. So we exceeded that. With one big marathon, the third big marathon we had, which was in London, closing downtown London streets for the first time in history in 1980. And that was the design model for what is now the London Marathon. They don't want to know that, but it's a good story.
That makes it even more special. I love it.
It does. It does. And I went back to run it and got this big award from the Queen and everything, which was really cool. But anyway, we put the numbers and the data and the statistics. We got medical evidence, which was one of the biggest barriers. Your uterus is going to fall out one, and the science that came in from these doctors, they were as surprised as we were, which was that women have the endurance and stamina, and that the marathon event in the Olympics is probably much more ideal than the high hurdles or the shot put. And in terms of women's participation, ability, native ability. So it got voted in an extraordinary meeting in 1981 for the 84 games. And, sort of the rest is history. It was a slam dunk of an event. It was, I think, the best event of the Olympic Games, including in the, not only Joni winning, like in a breakaway, one of the most courageous, gutsy races I've ever seen in my life. I often think about that race, because Greta Weitz held back because she thought she was going out too fast. And if Greta had won, everybody would say Greta ran the smartest race in the world. And Joni won, and everybody said, "My God, she was the gutsiest race in the world." But even when Gabrielle Anderson Scheisse came in at the end, staggering around the stadium, it was the moment when finally the world accepted that a woman could be exhausted in public. Men are heroes when they stagger across the finish line, and women were disgusting when they staggered across the finish line. And when she did it, everybody said she's a heroine, She's
Yeah,
our
wasn't
hero.
that an incredibly like hot, humid day? Because that was that in Los Angeles?
Yes, it was, but it wasn't an incredibly hot and humid day. It was
Ah,
a day that actually was certainly quite warm, but there was a
hmm.
breeze off the ocean,
Okay.
and it was, we were all relieved that it wasn't a real stifler of a day.
Yes.
The problem with her, Gabriel, was that the Swiss Federation made her meet this ridiculous qualifying time, and she was running marathons, like several of them, all over the whole year before, and
Hmm.
I think she showed up at the race exhausted. Um, and she was 39 years old, so she wasn't going to get another shot at the Olympics. So
Understandable. Mm.
this was the time to go, and she did. And in the end, as I say, as scary as it was to see, and as nerve wracking as it was for me as a commentator, because I was afraid that they would do something like they did in 1928 and suddenly pull the event from the games.
Oh.
Everybody just went crazy and said that this was really heroic performance. It was really, really amazing.
They
So
just
Yeah.
had a big thing for her in LA too, or they just had this big thing going on in LA at the stadium just last week for her and for women running and everything. I saw you posting, I saw everyone posting about it. Well, that was 84 and it's 2024, so that would be 40 years. So it was like the 40th year anniversary of it. That's
Mm.
what
it
it
is
was.
40th. Yeah. Yeah, it's the 40th year anniversary. And they're going to have a big party up in Olympia. So in May, apparently, for the trials, to celebrate the trials that they had there.
That's
Yeah,
excellent.
great. But I think, then of course, I'm never satisfied, or I am satisfied. That's not true. I just, how you get so excited, and it was a big, big moment. But about
Absolutely.
2 weeks later, I said, that's really great, the Olympics, for women. But what about all those women who are not allowed to go out of the house?
Mm.
Who are not allowed to get an education or drive a car, or can't choose their own husband, or get their nose cut off if they do something like go out and run. What about all those women who are too poor, or suffer domestic abuse and can't even get out of the house, or are too afraid? What about half of our neighbors, who say, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm too fat. I'm too slow. Everybody's looking at me." They
There's
still
always an
do it.
excuse. There's
And
always
I,
an
what did I
excuse.
say?
Yeah.
Nobody is freaking looking at you. It's just
It is tough to get out of a mindset to get out there and start, but once
yeah,
you get past that starting point, it's hopefully they can just keep going with it.
yeah, and they do, and that's when we founded 261 Fearless. The nonprofit, which
Yeah.
basically is a very simple idea, which is, a woman will run if she has a friend.
Mm.
And just put out your hand and say, "Hey, come out and have a walk with me, and let's go get a coffee. Let's jog a little bit. And don't you feel great? Oh God, I feel great." They always just say, "I feel really good," just to get them out of the house. And then, once they get moving, they start getting that sense of empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do with like weight loss, and everything to do with that sense of movement and control of your own body, and that sense of empowerment. And we're in 14 countries already. And each country has a series of clubs, and clubs, like groups, meet runs, but
Yep.
clubs, official clubs, where the women, have a trained coach, and we have a really good coaching and educational system. You want to learn more, just go to www.261fearless.org. And we'd love you to become a coach, join us, and then form your own organization, and be part of this huge global network, where we also have empowerment talks, educational programs, coaching support, um, uniforms, stuff. Adidas is really great. They sponsor all our coaches with the gear and shoes. It's really terrific. Which is, for some women, that's also life changing.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're really excited. We got a great group here in New Zealand. Got a great group in New York. Got a great group in Austria, and Berlin, and in London, and
It's awesome.
we're because, running has so completely changed our lives, and it has empowered us. And women can do anything if they just have the opportunity. So we're trying to give them that opportunity. And I think that we can go a long way to them not only having that sense of empowerment about themselves, but they can change other aspects of their lives, their work, or education, leave a bad relationship, be better for their kids. All these things is really important.
I love it. It's just the perfect catalyst to just go towards a better life.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm sorry. Whatever you're going to ask me, I've just taken over the whole interview here.
You've done it all. You
This
have
is
read.
the Kathrine Switzer show. You are welcome to say whatever you like.
You've
This
pretty
is a
much
dream
hit
come true.
everything on the show notes. But if I can go back, I want to go back to the Boston Marathon. But after the race, you're driving home, and around midnight, you stop to get coffee or ice cream or something. And the picture that everyone sees all over the world, all over the internet, all over whenever the Boston Marathon happens, whenever anyone talks about you, there's the picture, and you saw it for the first time that night on your drive home. Tell me about that story.
We thought this was just an isolated incident of Jock Semple yet again losing his temper, an angry, tired official trying to get the race on time. It was bad weather, it was hard conditions. And then I saw those pictures in the newspaper. And of course, we were talking about it in the car and said, oh, Arnie kept saying, oh, Jock, it's really infuriating me. He just can't control his temper. La, 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 la. But we were all trying to stay awake. Jesus, flip. It was like, 2:00 in the morning. And, we were exhausted. It was cold. We had to, and we couldn't move. We were so sore. And we got out of the car, limping across the parking lot just to get coffee to stay awake and some ice cream. And then we saw the papers, of course, the guys just loved it. They were crowing, look at that. I'm in the picture, and I just kind of went quiet because I thought, oh boy, my life's going to change. And I don't know how it's going to change. And I hope it can be a good thing. And then I crawled into my bed at dormitory, and the next day the phone is ringing like crazy, and one of the calls is from my mother, and she said, my God, what? We were trying to get a hold of you, and it didn't even occur to me to call her,
yeah.
And she said, I'm getting calls from lawyers, they want to, you to sue this guy for assault. And I said, oh my God, that's ridiculous. He just lost his temper. And my mother said, well, what do you want to do? What should I tell them? And I said, tell them that would be the worst thing I could do. I don't sue him. That would just be a bitchy woman. That's the way people would interpret that. I'm not looking for money. I just want to run.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, in the meantime, here I'm taking the high road, right? Jock Semple calls a press conference in Boston. This isn't in my book. No, it was in my book. Actually, he calls this press conference and they say, hey, Jock, what are you going to do about that? And Jock said, 4 hours and 20 minutes. I could have walked it that fast. That really annoyed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, nah, I'm not gonna fire back. I'm just gonna put my head down, become a better athlete. Then I got expelled from the AAU, and I got expelled for all these reasons: fraudulent entry. They didn't send my money back, Anyway, well, it was $2.
$2.
Big deal.
Still, the principle.
Big deal.
Wonder what that would be today, actually.
$300 and something. That's what it is.
$300 and something, right? Oh, Lord have mercy. Anyway, but the best one was that she'd run without a chaperone, which I think is a sign of the times, a real sign of the times. Mm-hmm. Yeah, women need protection.
Did they specifically have in like the rules to sign up that women were not allowed? And
no,
nothing
about gender on the entry form. And I had, because I said to Arnie, I said, is this against the rules? Because Roberta Gibb didn't wear a number. And he said, she should have worn a number. And I said, well, maybe it's against the rules. And he said, well, I knew you were going to ask that. And he brought his little blue AAU handbook, and we went through it, and there was nothing about gender in the marathon.
So he just had nothing to go on. And
nobody would believe a woman wanted to do it, or could do it. So, yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there who might misspeak about your story, and a lot of them say that you went KV. to hide the fact that you're a woman, but that's not the case of the story. You didn't do that, and you didn't try to hide even when Arnie went and got your bib. That was never part of your plan.
Well, it's true that I didn't go into the gym, but Arnie didn't want me to go into the gym. First of all, it was pouring rain, and everybody who was running was in there. And he said, I don't want you to go in there because these guys are running around naked, which was true. Okay, because they would get their bib and then they would change in the open gym area. There wasn't anybody else in there but athletes and officials, and all men. But why did I sign KV Switzer is another story that is true and extremely coincidental, which is that my dad misspelled my name on my birth certificate. He spelled the Kathrine without an E in the middle, and my name had always then been misspelled. And when I was writing for our high school newspaper, the typesetter would change my byline again and again and again to the Kathrine, and I got so pissed off. I just leave it alone. It's so I started signing my name KV Switzer because also this is a teenage thing, right? But I wanted to be J.D. Salinger in the worst kind of way. It's true. I'd read just about everything he wrote. And I said, I want to be J.D. Salinger. And then I looked at the newspapers and all the sports journalists, signed with their initials, or they had a name like Red, or something like Red Smith or something. But they always signed with their initials. So I said, okay, well, then interestingly enough, later, many years later, in fact, I got out that old entry form for the Boston Marathon and a copy of the entry list. All the officials have their initials. They sign their name with identified themselves with their initials. So it was an unusual thing. But anyway, I'd been signing my name with my initials, so I signed KV Switzer.
Yeah.
And that's the story. Heard from Kathrine herself on the On the Runs podcast. Kathrine, you're amazing.
I'll tell you the truth is I did not want to go to Boston and say, hey, look at me, I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I wanted to be really low key. And I had on a very cute shorts and top that I wanted to show off in. But I didn't want to broadcast the fact that, hey, I'm a girl. But I did want to look good. And I was completely thwarted in that because it was pouring rain and sleeting and snowing. It was horrible conditions. So I had to leave my baggy gray sweatsuit on. And then, of course, people said, oh, you were faking your identity under the gray sweatsuit.
Just looking for more excuses.
Right? I think in the photo, everyone had a similar looking sweatsuit on, too.
Yeah. We wore everything we owned. I mean, they had hats and gloves and windbreakers and all kinds of stuff. But, and it was cold. It was bitter cold. The only
it's all over the place.
Yeah. The only weather conditions that were worse were 2018.
That was my year.
No kidding.
It was awful. Yep. It was.
Oh my
God.
And were you able to finish?
I did. I had trained really well, and I probably finished a good half an hour slower than I wanted to, but God forbid I was going to finish that no matter what, because that was my only Boston, and it being Boston, I knew I just had to get there. So I trekked through the sleet and the rain and the cold, and I made it, but it was no easy feat.
I got to hand it to you because, there were many people who were terrific athletes, as we know, and they were falling by the wayside with hypothermia. So it wasn't tough. It wasn't necessarily a matter of not being trained. It was a matter of really, really tough conditions. Yes. And honest to God, I just, I was doing the broadcast that year and I thought, this is just unreal. And in fact, it was my last broadcast because I had I broadcast the race for 42 years for WBZ. And I said, I'm going to retire this year. Oh, no, you can't. And I said, well, I said I was going to go when I wanted to go, or I was going to wait until finally an American woman's going to win the race. And I said, and she's not. And it was Desi Linden. And I said, yes.
Desi. Yeah. Incredible. I still get goosebumps thinking about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, of course she had trained in that kind of stuff. But,
she's amazing.
It's so hard to overcome sometimes. Oh, thank you. I admire you.
Well, that was very, very tough. It's easy to say, look, I'm dropping out because, so many people did, and totally justifiably.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to get her back in. Maybe we talked about this just
Someday.
yesterday. Maybe next year or the one after, we're going to work hard, get her back in the Boston Marathon so she can have that glorious day with like good weather and just sunshine and a bunch of cheering fans who are all excited for her too. Not that they weren't in 2018,
And if
but
we
man,
don't,
that
then
weather
we know
was
that
something
I'm
else.
the jinx. That's what it's going to be.
Hey, well,
I'm
look, you know what? If you can't qualify, okay, come and join 261 Fearless. We have a
Do you
charity
do
team every year.
fundraising? Yes.
We have a charity team every year. We'll help you fundraise, get you there. We'd love to have
That's
you join.
amazing.
Yeah,
That would be great.
It would be
That
an
would
honor.
be great.
yeah.
Kathrine, I want to say one more thing before Erica. Erica, I know, has something to say to you after, but I want to cover one more thing about that race and about Jock, because Jock said a few things, you took the higher ground, but years later, you two made up, or you were friends with him. You were friends with him until the day he died. Tell me a little more about your relationship with him
Yeah,
after the Boston
yeah.
Marathon.
I really did. I forgave him going over Heartbreak Hill, and when he made things worse by saying things like "I could have walked it that fast," or
Mhm.
if that girl were my daughter, I would spank her. You know, he just kept digging it deeper and deeper and
Yeah.
deeper. You had to just shrug it off. But and everybody said, what do you think about Chuck? So they interview him, and then they come and interview me, and I said, look, he's a man who's, done a lot for the Boston Marathon, and he just lost his temper, and he had a bad day, and they said, well, are you forgiving him? And I said, sure. Everybody has a bad day. But he just kept making it worse. And then finally, when he saw Sarah May and me and Nina working really hard on the rules, trying to do it the right way, getting other women into the race. And finally, we changed that legislation, and we made women official in 1972. And at first, he was still pissed off and said, if these women are going to run my race, they're going to meet the men's qualifying time. And it was with 3:30 in those years. And there were 8 of us who could do it, and 8 of us showed up, and 8 of us registered, 8 of us ran, and all 8 of us finished. And when we
I love
did,
it.
it changed his mind completely. And I teased him. I said, so, Jock, are you ever going to like me anymore? I mean, when I got my trophy that year, he was still angry. I'm not kidding. And he was so embarrassed because the trophy was broken in the packing.
Oh.
And so when he took it out of the packing and handed it to me, he said, look, I'm sorry the trophy is broken. If you send it back, we'll replace it. And he said, but I've been mad at you for 5 years, and you deserve a broken trophy.
No way.
Oh, Jock.
That's what I mean by a hard case.
Yeah.
Anyway, finally, Jock and I became, because I just worked on him and worked, and finally we became really good friends. We would do panel discussions together. I was the guest when he launched his book, The Surprise Guest. I ran out of the stage in my sweatsuit and tried to tackle him.
That's great.
We did fun things like that together. And then I visited him, a few hours before he died. And people say to me, my God, that's a lot of forgiveness. And you have to say this. I say this all the time. How can you not love somebody who has changed your life so completely, even though it was a bad thing at the time? You take the high road, and you make something that is very positive and life affirming and changing millions of women's lives. How can you not love somebody who's done that? For better or worse, right?
He lit the fire. He really did.
He did. Despite himself, he changed women's history for the better.
Yes. I hope he realized that before he passed, that he really had an impact on you, which had an impact on everything else. It's a snowball effect.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he regrets having done that, though. And because he did a lot for the Boston Marathon. He saved that race is particularly during the Depression and the war years. He kept it going when people were saying, "Oh, it's a mess. It screws up traffic. It's too expensive. Why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
and he stuck with it. But I remember coming out of the hospital where he was when he was dying, and I said to some friends who were with me, I said, tomorrow in the New York Times, for all the great things that Jock Semple has actually done for the sport, he's going to be remembered for attacking a girl in the Boston Marathon. And I said, I'm sorry in a way for him.
Yeah.
That's going to be his lasting legacy. But, if you look at it in a positive way, I guess it's okay. Because sure enough, the next day in the New York Times, there it was.
There it was.
Dead at whatever. And then there's a picture of him attacking.
Well, we're just glad that you're the type of person
that's going to happen too.
Oh.
They're not going to talk about 261 and us having a great interview. They're going to show that picture.
There better be more.
Well, maybe they'll see our picture that we'll post of you too. Maybe they'll see that.
But we're just thankful that you're the kind of person who has that forgiveness in her heart, because it just has grown to be this incredible phenomenon, and you just helped propel women's sports, women's marathoning to what it is today. So it's incredible.
Thank you, I loved the fact that there's these women who are going to carry it even further. Well beyond just the marathon. We're going to see stuff we can't even imagine right now.
I love it. We already have with the Lululemon project, the Further project. Like the limits they do not exist.
Yeah. What I really am excited about though is that more and more women around the world, because of the communication and the breaking down of social restriction, are going to start running and get that sense of empowerment and get much more control over their own lives. And that's what's going to change history.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So just one last thing for me, Kathrine, because you have just been so amazing. On behalf of women, I just want to say thank you for your bravery that has sparked some serious changes within the running community. The changes that ultimately made running and marathoning a more inclusive sport, because that is just huge for us. It's thanks to people like you and other women pioneers that allowed women everywhere to have the chance to test their limits and to show the world what we're capable of. So as a women runner, thank you for paving the way forward.
Oh, Erica, that is really nice. Thank you very, very much. I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to both of you, really, for spreading the word, getting the word out there, igniting and exciting people to this wonderful activity, which is so really cheap, accessible, and
right.
And anybody can do it. So yeah, that's really, really good of you to say that. I think we're going to go really far. Thanks to people like you. Thank you.
I certainly hope so. It's one of our passions, and we hope that we can make an impact just as much as you have. So
great. Thank you so much.
You're amazing. Both of you are so amazing.
I'm just glowing right now. I'm so incredibly happy. This has been a dream interview.
Yeah, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for working this out. Like, you're on the other side of the world. We're over here. You probably know nothing about us, but this is a fun little passion project of ours on the side. And you are our 100th episode. And that's a big deal. That's a really big deal for me. Like, this has been so much fun. And I'm like, I want 100 to have some significance. And it is a couple weeks before Boston. We do Boston weeks every April to highlight Boston runners and to help them with their fundraising or talk about their training or hear about their experience throughout the entire month. So you're kicking off Boston weeks, but you're also our 100th episode. And that's, to us, that's a big deal. And we're so happy we were able to make this happen, including all the technical troubles we had for 30 minutes before.
And can I just tell you one more thing? So for Boston Week, we have 4 incredible runners, and they are all women. So we are very happy to showcase how far the Boston Marathon has come with
great
running.
Super.
Yeah, you're going to love these women. This is going to be great. Thank you so much, Kathrine. You're the best. Thanks for everything you did. I think Erica said it perfectly, and it came from the right person there. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed that. Kathrine Switzer on the On the Runs podcast.
Thank you, Eric and Erica.